At the pinnacle of his power, a man risks losing control. The world is not kind, so its king has become cruel. Murder is never mercy, it's never noble, and it's never redeemable. To the maniac, murder is an art form.
What is happening to God say something?
Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live on this Thursday night in July. I'm joined tonight by my frequent collaborator on the former Sausage Factory and one of my favorite people to just chime about old movies with, Mr. Stone Gasman.
Thank you, Lauren. Oh, yes. I'm so happy to be here. Finished my work week up here in Manhattan, and now just chilling in my Brooklyn apartment, and ready to talk about movies for a few hours. Can't wait.
So, is there the sound of Kalashnikovs being fired outside? Or are we good for the moment?
Oh, we're good. We're good. Yeah.
Want to make sure you're safe.
Yes, we are safe. Yeah, and I mean, is everybody wearing a mask? No, but I'm only going to and from work, so I'm doing pretty well, I guess.
In the good old days, we could make jokes about people on the road wearing masks. Today, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Stone,
yes.
We have a holiday coming up in a couple days. Actually,
Yes.
a day and a half at this point. So, I know the 4th of July is close to your heart. So, what are your plans for the holiday?
Just chilling at home. And reading.
Reading anything good?
Well, I wanted to finish this book called Bleak December. I still haven't yet, but
Now people are going to think that I lined that up, and I completely didn't.
I assure everybody in the audience that I was completely improv. Okay, I am not sponsored by Lauren Dixon to make that announcement. But when I'm done with that book, I got a pile of other books I got to read, because this summer I'm working on a book that I hope to get done by the end of the year, roughly November-ish. So I got a lot of reading to do. So I'm going to be staying safe, and just chilling online and in my books. That's what I'm going to be doing.
Excellent. So, I know, and again, we've talked about the 4th meaning a lot to you as your favorite holiday. So, how does it outclass the Easter and the Halloween and the Christmas for you?
Well, the 4th of July, the reason why the 4th of July is very, very, very special to me is merely because, I just think it's an awesome day. I mean, some of my favorite movies are set on Independence Day. And, I grew up, just to get it out of the way with a little bit of my background, I lived in Northern Virginia up until I was 18. I joined the Navy at 18 years old and served for 8 years. And I actually grew up a stone throw away. Actually, let me just swipe that. But no, I served in the Navy for 8 years. And I got out, had some difficulties in terms of PTSD and whatnot. So, I mean, I've really only emerged with an online voice only in the past 5 years. Before that, I was very quiet, very introverted. I actually lived off the grid for 3 years. I had a period after the military where I just went on an easy rider phase and would just drive around the country and just talk to people and just do my own little thing. But I moved to New York 5 years ago It's been a very interesting transition. Before I dive, the 4th of July thing, let me ask you, Lauren, because I have a trivia question for you and the rest of the audience, and this is going to be a challenge.
Should I let them try to answer it first, or do you want me to?
Let's let them do it. I mean, I don't know if you're going to know what it is, but I'll just ask you first, and we'll just see if anybody in the chat knows. What is the only movie in motion picture history to be directly censored by a United States president?
Oh, I can answer that.
Hmm.
Do you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Manchurian Candidate.
It was.
Pretty sure.
And I completely gave up my credentials there.
So what else was censored by a U.S. president?
1776. Nixon ordered an entire musical number be removed from a Tony Award-winning musical where William Daniels played John Adams.
See, I would not have come up with that.
You would not have come up with that. Well, and also the big deal about that movie is also that Blythe Danner did an entire musical number where she danced and sang while 5 months pregnant with Gwyneth Paltrow. Let that sink in.
Well, that explains some of the kooky side of Gwyneth Paltrow, I think.
I'm also a
I have a question for you.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a 4th of July trivia question for you.
Okay.
So, what 1980 horror film makes a direct reference to the 4th of July in its very final scene? In the chat, you can scream it out if you need, because this is completely unfair.
Yeah, it does sound unfair. Hope it's not the one I'm thinking of.
What are you thinking of?
But I don't think it is. Nobody's answering.
No, they're stone quiet now. They're like, forget about it. So throw it out there just in case you're right. You look brilliant.
Is it The Shining?
It is The Shining. So the photo,
Okay.
the ballroom photo that Jack is in at the end of the film,
Yes,
is subtitled
Yes, it is.
July 4th. But I mean, it's funny
That is
because
true.
we don't think of the 4th of July as being a setting for a lot of horror films, but I Know What You Did Last Summer, Jaws, Uncle Sam, The Shining, as I just said, mentions it. The Cape Fear remake. Return of the Living Dead takes place 2 days before the proper holiday. The Piranha remake.
Yes.
So
yes.
I guess the horror film really is as American as apple pie, because we do have probably at least as many set there as most holidays that are not called Halloween. So you grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up
Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. I'm sorry. Where did I come up with Massachusetts? That's
Boston. I don't know.
I don't know. It's crazy. I grew up in Jersey. So ironically, I grew up watching a UHF channel from New York a lot in my formative years to catch up on a lot of older monster movies. And that's where I'd see things like Them, which we discussed recently, originally. And that was WPIX, Channel 11, which I have no idea whether it still exists or not. It may still exist, but no one watches UHF anymore. And for an entire generation that remembers a time before VHS being in every household, that 83 to 85 period, whereas everyone got the machines in the house.
Yes.
UHF was VHS for an entire group of us, because that was the only place we were ever going to see these older movies. It wasn't like they were going to play secondhand theaters. The secondhand theaters were playing films that were maybe 18 months old. They weren't paying things, from 4 decades earlier. So did you grow up with UHS as part of your background? And is that where you kind of fell in love with movies, or was it VHS, or was it the movie theater?
It was all VHS. I mean, I might as well just throw out my theatrical experience, which changed my. I mean, I discovered movies as an art form because of a certain movie that came out in 1990. Before that, I had seen movies like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Batman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, escapist movies. And I would have fun, but, I didn't get an attachment to movies for what they were at that time. No, actually, it was in November of 1990 when my mother insisted on dragging me to a 3-hour movie about Native Americans.
Dances.
I sat down. Dances with Wolves. I sat down. I was convinced I was going to hate this. In fact, what other 10-year-old kid would tell their mother, well, the movie's PG-13. It might be too violent for me. But look, I sat down. I was disgruntled. I thought, no, I'm going to fall asleep sometime in this 3-hour movie. I know I am. And amazingly enough, I did not fall asleep. I was so absorbed from the first second of the movie, where you see him on the hospital about to get his legs amputated, to the very last scene where him and Stands with a Fist are going up the mountain, and that closing crawl comes. Every single word in that closing crawl is 100% true. And look, I stayed through the entire end credits and had tears in my eyes the entire time. That's how much of a profound impact that movie had on me. And yeah, it's the movie where I fell in love with movies as an art form. I mean,
it's not a bad entry point at all.
Not a bad entry point.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I loved crap entertainment mostly in my youth.
Yes.
And then I remember going to see Glengarry, Glen Ross.
A
movie about people talking, And
yes.
I didn't know who Mamet was at the time at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was just completely spellbound by what that movie could do with just really one element of storytelling, which is just dialogue. There's nothing that movie does nothing outside of the dialogue. And it really opened my eyes to what I already wanted to be a writer, but I was thinking I wanted to write crap. I wanted to write, bloody nonsense. And it really opened my eyes up to what voice could do on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had a moment where I remember sitting just dumbfounded after the movie ended and being like, that changes things for me. Like fundamentally, what I thought the art form was at one point, it wasn't now. And thankfully, I think we've had films in the genre that I call home, that have followed in those footsteps. Not in the same way. You'll never find a Glengarry Glen Ross horror movie. But you've seen people get an incredible amount of value out of elements that you wouldn't normally expect. And I think that's encouraging because it says that we don't need $100 million worth of CGI to tell a movie and have it be instantly compelling. So let's back up though. I mean,
yes.
Dances with Wolves wasn't the first film you'd seen. Clearly.
No, clearly. Mm-hmm.
So how young were you when the VCR came into the house?
See, the thing is that I remember my father, even though I was only 3 or 4 years old, he had gotten a VCR, I think in early '82. And the very first tape, at least I'm pretty sure that the very first tape that he recorded movies on, he put on there The Wizard of Oz, and then after that he put Star Wars. So that was the tape that we wore out for the next 20 years, watching The Wizard of Oz and then Star Wars.
And so they had to have been recorded on the slowest possible speed, or they had to be, the fastest possible speed, so they could both fit. So they probably wore out pretty good. What's the matter?
Oh, you're back. You're back. You went away for a second.
Guys in the chat, let us know if I went away because I didn't see that on my end. Just so I can troubleshoot if I need to. So
okay, no problem.
That tape, because obviously it wasn't SP mode, it was definitely EP mode, right? I mean, it probably wore down pretty well by the time you retired it.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Wore down to the nub, basically.
But the irony is that you had both films unmolested.
Yes.
And they're both films
absolutely.
that have undergone horrific transformations. So.
Yes. Yeah. Man, I grew up with and I actually had a Star Wars copy that did not have the New Hope subtitle.
Really?
I did.
I wasn't aware. But again, was that one you bought, or was that one you recorded off television?
I have no idea where my father got it. He recorded it on the tape when I was 2 years old.
Wow.
I have no idea. So somehow he managed to get.
I was under the impression that the every Fox release had the new opening crawl. I might be wrong.
I thought so too. I don't remember no, New Hope wasn't there. It was just Star Wars, and then it opened just like it opened theatrically in '77. And that's what my whole thing with Star Wars is, that I'm not so much a fan as I am a purist. And what I mean by that, it's basically the first two films, and that's it.
Well, I mean, I've said this before. I'm not a Star Wars fan at all, really.
Right.
And it's unfair for me to really comment too deeply on them. I like two films in the series, and we overlap on one of them, which probably tells you which one is the best, no matter what. Empire.
Oh, that's right. The other one you like is Rogue One.
Rogue One. I think there's some fairly inventive storytelling going on in Rogue One, and I like that it takes a lot of the dumb space magic out of it. Which, I'm sorry, I just always felt it was the weakest possible component, because once you introduce an element like the Force, there's nothing you can't do to resolve your story. I'm not a Doctor Who fan either, but it is like the sonic screwdriver is everywhere. You can just magic yourself out of any story problem you create. And I just think that's really lame. Really lame. And the fact that it was so badly defined for so long is just amazing me too. Like, fans get pissed off usually when things are just, you can do this. But right up till the very last film, they were introducing new things that it could do. I mean, who tolerates that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Look, my hope is to actually see 77 Star Wars in a theater again. And look, the 50th anniversary is in 2027. Star Wars came out on May 25th, 1977, which on May 25th, 1927 is the day that the first sound newsreel came out. So I can't think of a better movie that would celebrate the 100th anniversary of sound in motion pictures. But, Disney is all about their pockets, and I've lost so much respect for Disney. I refuse to get Disney Plus, despite all the positive things I've heard about midichlorian or whatever the show's called. I mean, forgive me, Mandalorian.
That's awesome.
Sorry,
no,
Mandalorian.
No. You had it right. You had it right.
Yeah, midichlorian.
I'll never have Disney Plus. I mean, if someone can give me a good, solidly good reason why I should change my mind, I mean, but my thing is, I don't like the Disney animated films. The classics or the modern stuff. The modern stuff, man, you might as well take sandpaper in my eyes. I mean, people go, well, what about Pixar? Guys, I can live without it. It's better. Yeah, sure, but I can live without it. So what is it? I mean, the stuff I'd be most interested in would be their live action 70s stuff that was kind of edgy for kids entertainment, I guess. But I'd burn through that pretty fast. And then I don't need the service.
Yeah. I mean, I just wish that. I mean, is there any hope that we could see Star Wars as it was intended to be ever again?
Yes. It's called money.
Money.
I think Lucas has to die first.
I hate to say it, but you're right. I've always thought that, and I thought, you know what, that has to happen first.
I think.
I don't want it to happen, but You
don't want listen, I don't want anyone to go, but there's certain things that have to happen in order for the world to move on. There's certain personalities that have dominated. It's the Stephen King problem in horror. We'll never get a true democracy in the horror fiction space while King is alive. Now, I don't want King to die, but the truth is the media won't leave him alone until he either goes Salinger on us or leaves us. And that's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And no one will be allowed. And at that point, does it pass to his son? Does it get passed to whoever's doing the most interesting work? Who knows? But it's not going to happen until then. And the same thing's true, I think, with Lucas. We don't get Star Wars until he's gone. And I think on the 1 year, probably on his birthday, the year after he goes, original Star Wars in its original form it will be released to show in context how big of a pioneer he was. You know, I think that's almost inevitable because the money to be made from it is just huge. But here's the question. That's assuming that theaters are still up and running.
Yes.
So, I mean, the physical media thing we should talk about a little bit because talked about
absolutely.
VHS. VHS was your gateway into movies.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was UHF and then VHS. But I do consider those to be two parts of kind of the same coin in a way. Because, and I'll stand by this, Blockbuster might have had walls filled with new releases. But that was your fast food. That's what you ate just, I guess we'll go get a movie. When you wanted something great that you knew that you was going to stick with you, you got it from the middle of the store.
The mom and pop store, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the UHF experience. You couldn't control what they watched, but there was some form of curation happening there that informed an entire generation. So we're at a crossroads now. No one knows exactly what's happening in theaters. It looks like it's unlikely that AMC is going to get out of this year alive. There are 22% of the domestic market by most accounts. Other companies are going to, subscription models to try and keep customers coming in to buy popcorn. And it works, by the way, such as Regal. There's other players like Sinopolis and the Alamo Draft House, which have put all their money on food, all of it. So what do you think the chances are that we live in a world without theaters on the landscape? And what does that do to films for you?
Oh, man, I haven't even thought about that, but thinking about it now, I mean, I was thinking the other day, and I even had a conversation with somebody about it, is that, I mean, this is the perfect time for the drive-in to make a comeback, I think. It's the perfect time for drive-in theaters to come back because, they were an American institution. And, I think people would prefer to see movies in that kind of an environment. You can still have your food, you can have your privacy and everything instead of sitting in a theater where, other people around you are unpredictable. Because my biggest pet peeve in the world is people with phones in the theater. To me, I don't even see the point of bringing the phone in the theater. Leave it in the car, leave it at home. I don't care. I mean,
at the very least, leave it in the pocket.
Yes, at the very least. But I haven't not been to a regular like Regal theater or whatnot in several years because I couldn't take it anymore. So now I just do Alamo. And I know that Alamo has been reaching out to their customer base, doing surveys and everything. I don't know. I don't know if even I would be comfortable in that environment now. I just don't know. Full
disclosure, 2 weeks ago, I was at a drive-in to see Jurassic Park and Jaws.
Yes.
And this weekend, I am going to see Raiders of the Lost Ark and a new movie called The Relic out of Australia. It's a new horror film that is getting a theatrical release specifically to drive-ins this weekend. So,
really?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yep, I'm with you. But I'll tell you what.
Come pick me up.
Pick you up? You're in the wrong direction, man. You're going to meet me halfway?
I'll pay you the gas.
Oh, my God. Does anyone out there want to pick Stone up, drive him out west, and meet up with us? Because
where's the drive-in?
It's in Pennsylvania. Do you want to make things even? You want to hear something even crazier? This drive-in has 2 screens. You know what the first movie on the other screen is? And you can watch whichever movie you want. Ghostbusters. So you have to choose between Ghostbusters and Raiders of the Lost Ark at the same time.
I think God.
I've seen Ghostbusters in the theaters. That's the thing. I haven't seen Raiders in the theaters. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen Raiders in theaters. Yeah, I haven't seen Raiders in theaters, but
Piz just offered to pick you up in the chat. Piz just said he'll drive up and pick you up. Piz, you might want to get on the road now. So James Frost has a question that plays right into this, and that's a question for both you guys. What are some of your most fond memories in a mom and pop video rental store?
Oh, wow. Well, see, my mom and pop video rental store was called Errols, and if anybody lived on the East Coast, hopefully they remember Errols before Blockbuster, of course, came in and soaked everything up. But I remember they had this video catalog. They had created their own video catalog, and I remember they had a mature section, and this was 86, and for certain movies they would have pictures to showcase them. Like they would have a shot of Star Trek II, for example, when that movie came out on VHS. But anyway, but they had a mature section, and they would put the movie ratings aside by every movie. But I'll never forget this. In the mature section, every single movie was not rated, except for one. Except for one movie, and I never understood why they only had one R-rated movie in this mature section. Well, nobody remembers a movie called Thief of Hearts, which came out in 1984, and it's this erotic thriller written by the same guy that did Officer and a Gentleman, but there's barely any sex in it. It's bizarre. It's about this guy played by Stephen. The guy from Scarface, Stephen Bauer.
Yeah.
Yes, Stephen Bauer. He breaks into people's homes, rich people's homes, and he likes to read women's diaries. So he starts going after these women using his newfound secrets. It's
the 80s were a hell of a time,
and it's got barely any sex in it. I mean, it's just, for an erotic thriller, it's pretty flaccid. It's pretty flaccid. But I'll never understood why that one movie, had to be R-rated in a sea full of not rated movies. I just never understood that. But and one more thing before I let you take it over. The other thing about Errols was, look, Friday the 13th Part 3 was the first Friday the 13th movie I saw. I was determined to watch the rest of them. I actually walked 10 miles to Errols to buy Friday the 13th on VHS for $9.99. Walked 10 miles back. Watched it. And my parents had no idea. And it was awesome. Yeah, it was one of the coolest movie experiences I've had. But the floor is now yours, sir.
So my local video store that we joined the day we bought the VCR was called Popcorn Video, and the reason they were named, they were literally one shop, one owner deal. He'd given up his career to try this thing out, and he got about a decade and a half out of it, running his own shop, and still did repairs after that. But anyway, his whole gimmick was that when you walked in, he had popcorn that was available free in small little bags. They weren't large bags, but they were bags, and he'd pop popcorn all day in this popcorn on a cart. So everyone got popcorn if you walked in. And this place was infamous because apparently when you walked in, the smell of popcorn was overpowering to the point where it was more powerful than in a movie theater. I don't have a sense of smell. I have no sense of smell. Haven't since I was 2. So that never affected me. And I remember him walking up to me one day and being like, "You're the only one that doesn't make a sound or exhale or rush for the popcorn." And I was young, right? So he's like,
yeah.
"What's going? Do you not like popcorn?" I'm like, "No, I love popcorn, but I don't even know the popcorn's there until I see it." And I had a long-running relationship with this store. It sounds very odd to people today, I'm sure, but you were loyal to your local video store. You didn't necessarily belong to 6 of them. And the idea that you could belong to more than one was even something I don't think I fully grasped at that age.
Yeah, exactly.
But I found myself in a strip mall not far from where I live for a friend's family, and there was a video store next door. And I said, "Can we just walk in there And I walked in there, and the thing I didn't realize is because, limited experience being young, that every mom and pop video store had different titles. Titles you'd never heard of. Titles that I couldn't find in my reference books, or I'd never seen a listing for in the free TV guide that came in the newspaper, because we never bought a TV guide. That was money we were not going to spend. So, and I remember, like, it was to me more impactful than many years later when my grandmother took me to Disney World. When I walked into Disney World, I was looking at kids around me go, not me. Like, wow, it's cool. But walking into that video store and it being so different than the video store I was used to was that I would, Mecca. And to tell you how different that store was, in the video store I went to, you brought the empty box up to, and he got it, the actual tape, from behind the counter. I think most of them worked like that until the Blockbuster model took over. But at this place, there was little keys dangling from little hooks under each box, and you brought the key up, and they got the movie for you. And I remember that being really baffling to me. Like, why would you do that? But then, all those systems went by the wayside as soon as Blockbuster and Hollywood Video kind of snapped the entire industry into conformity of how, no, this is how you do it. And I really miss that. I miss there being a bunch of businesses that sprang up overnight, had to figure out how to do it themselves, came up with their own answers. And by the time VHS was a done deal, and DVD had taken over, and Blockbuster took over at that point too, pretty quickly thereafter, I probably belonged to 8 video stores. I probably had membership at like 8 because I was addicted to just finding different titles I couldn't find. I had a video store that was a half hour from my house that I went to on a fairly regular basis. And people thought I was nuts. Well, you could go right down the street and pick a movie. I'm like, yeah, but they don't have this and this and this. I think, so that's not really answering the question you asked, which was for a single moment, but that's my memories. That's my biggest memory of the video store experience.
I was going to say the mecca of video stores that I discovered was when I was in Norfolk, Virginia for a while. There's a video store. Hopefully it's still there. I don't know, but it's near Old Dominion University, and there's a theater right next door. They had sections. They had a foreign film, an entire room for foreign films, all divided by country. That's the ultimate video store that I've been in. I will never forget that one. They had a whole section of Russ Meyer movies. See, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Okay.
So we talked offline yesterday, and I asked you about when you moved into the city, because in New York City on St. Mark's, there was a video store called Kim's Underground. They actually had rental stores throughout the city, but they had their retail shop, which was on St. Mark's. And if you don't know what St. Mark's is, people, because you're not from this part of the country, it's cool. It went from being kind of this hippie center of the world in the 60s to, in the late 70s, being the punk rock capital of the world. Whereas all the shops went from being hippie shops, and then like a decade later, they were all punk rock oriented shops. At this time, when I started going into the city on a regular basis, it was kind of transitioning. The hair metals thing was still big, but alternative was kind of brewing up. So you just had a mad mixture of things going on that street. But they had this video store called Kim's Underground. 3 stories. The bottom floor was music. The top 2 floors was all movies. And you'd walk in and you'd walk to the second floor, and that was kind of your mainstream. The third floor is where the magic happened. And that's where, if you walked in and said, I'm going to go to the Tobe Hooper section, you could walk over to a section, a bookshelf size section that said Tobe Hooper under it, and had every edition of every Tobe Hooper film you could imagine. Not always at a reasonable price, but you could get anything. And I've said this before, there was a registry and a big board where people would post wants. Like, I'm looking for this movie from this year. And someone would pull it if they had it. They'd call you and they'd say, I can make you a dupe of it. So you had an entire film community, because this was not far from NYU either, and their film program, not terribly far from the Patterson University film community either. So there was this, my cat is screaming. Sorry, guys.
That's no problem.
But there was this ability to walk in and eventually get a copy of just about anything. Hang on a second, Stone. Can you make some noise for a little bit? I'll make my cat be quiet in the most humane way possible. Carry the show, man.
Is she being tortured?
There is no better television, no better channel on YouTube than the channel in which a cat playing with a crinkle ball can completely stop the show. I should have an intermission card I can put up for events like that. And no, the cat is not being tortured. That cat is spoiled rotten. She has a toy that she likes to grab, and then while she has it in her mouth, scream for people to give her attention for having caught the crinkle ball. So.
Well, when you're ready to put up the intermission card, that's when I'll refill my vaporizer. So there you go.
Whatever you want to do, so sure, sir. We'll accommodate you.
No problem.
So, I know for myself, I definitely have certain themes in my favorite movies that reoccur. If you look at my top 3 movies, Bride of Frankenstein, Natural Born Killers, and Heathers. They're all kind of fractured romances, which people might not initially think of when they think of me, but they're all about, wanting this deep connection in a world that's not really conducive to it. So I found out the hard way that that's something that's important to me. Film taught me that about myself. Do you find yourself going back to certain themes in movies?
Going back to certain themes in movies? Let's see. Well, I mean, definitely movies about the human condition. Movies where people go on personal journeys. Movies based on true stories. Dehumanization, which, of course, Kubrick, he loved making movies about that. The thing with me is that I'm so open to almost anything. I mean, the one genre I don't care for, and I'll watch anything from any genre. The only one I don't care for is animation. I can't explain that except for the fact that, I've only seen 25% of all Pixar movies. I prefer live action. I mean, as a perfect example, one of my favorite movie directors is Robert Zemeckis. Ever since he started out in the late 70s and up until now, when he started doing his CGI motion capture animation stuff, I zoned out. And I didn't watch him again until he made his another live action film, which was Light with Denzel Washington. But one of my personal favorites, I hope you love it too. It's Death Becomes Her with Goldie Hawn and Bruce Willis.
I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters.
Oh, you got to see it again. Yeah, you got to see it again. It's too funny, and it's very underrated. Very underrated. No one
talks about it anymore at all. It's kind of crazy.
But it's a pitch black satire on Hollywood and its vanity and all that good stuff. I mean, it's really well done. And it's the movie that he made before Forrest Gump. And it actually, believe it or not, I actually remember when Death Becomes Her won the Academy Award for visual effects because of the hole in the stomach. Yeah.
Which today you can do literally with
literally any computer can do it like that. Yeah.
Any program, and it'll come out looking as good. But at the time, it was mind bending. So because on the chat they're claiming that I do not have a cat, and that this is a captive child, I just want to show everyone that indeed there is a cat, and its name is Stormcloud.
Oh, Stormcloud. Okay.
Of course. There are more than a few cats around here.
Oh,
that is the cloud.
That is the cloud.
It is the cloud. So I know that was it last year? I believe it was last year. Trekked out into civilization, into the wilds of New Jersey to go to a convention.
Yes.
And this was your first convention, I take it?
My very first convention of any kind. I mean, I will probably never go to a Comic-Con. It's just not my thing. I would go to a Chronicon, but when I found out that one of my favorite '80s actresses was appearing at this convention, I thought, you know what, let me go to one of these things. Let me check it out. Let me have some fun. And I did have fun. I mean, granted, I went there for one day. I went there on a Sunday. Very, very few people, which was great. And I got to say, I was satisfied after walking around for maybe 3 hours. I was satisfied. But I thought to myself, you know what? I did have so much fun that I actually do want to do more conventions now. But unfortunately, because of, I'm just hoping that everybody's going to come back in September. I just really hope that they are, because this year, of course, I'm looking forward to meeting. Last year it was, of course, Diane Franklin, who is in the picture that I provided. But this year it's going to be Carrie Green from the Goonies and Camille Keaton from I Spit on Your Grave, who I'm a huge fan of. So I will be going back to the wilds of New Jersey to meet them.
That is, it's always good to see people and talk to them after their first convention experience, because it does change over time. But I will tell you this: you did it right. You do not want to go for an entire weekend. You don't want
Yes.
The people who do that tend to be people who have a ton of friends that do the whole weekend. They're going bar hopping afterwards. But those are, they're expensive enough to do one day. To drop $1,000 to spend a weekend, I'm not saying I would never do it, but it would have to be completely awesome circumstances. But Piz, if you're going to that convention as well, so there's no reason why you can't just spend the extra 2.5 hours driving a little bit north to pick Stone up. There's just no reason. You're willing to volunteer me, but I will say that the one thing about conventions that the first time always feels great is just when the reality sets in. That you're in a room and these are people you've watched on screen, and you'll never recapture that feeling exactly again, which is the sad part. But it's also the good part, because as you become a little bit more acclimated to it, you're less likely to make dumb financial decisions that sometimes people make during their first time, buying too much or paying for signatures that they realize later on they don't really need, that never come out of the binder. At this point, if I get one signature for most cons, that's probably a lot.
Just to give you an idea how weird I am, aside from Diane Franklin, I did have another guest sign a movie I have with him in it, even though he's only in 2 scenes. Now, have you heard of the actor George Weiner?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, he's most famous for Spaceballs, because he played, what was his name, Captain Asshole? In that, I forget what it was. And look, I've seen Spaceballs a billion times, but look, I adored this little scene movie with Richard Dreyfuss. And like I said, he's only in 2 scenes. And I just asked him, look, I know that Richard Dreyfuss was incapacitated and he doesn't remember a thing. But what was your experience working with Richard Dreyfuss? And it was just, it was fascinating hearing him talk about it. And I don't think he was prepared for somebody to come up with this movie in particular. Probably the last person in the world. And, and I think he was, it's like, wow, somebody actually saw my early work. And who's also in this movie in a very small part is Reanimator's Jeffrey Combs. And I think this was his first film as a medical student. I think it was. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. And unfortunately they don't mention him in the commentary, but he's definitely on screen and he has dialogue. So,
so I've discovered that if you really want to meet someone, don't go up with their
Yes.
big movie, anything from their big movies, and don't buy anything off their table. Because the whole thing
Exactly.
is they're going to spend as little time as they can with you because they're not engaged. They do that all day, and it's not that they're horrible people. It's that think about it. It becomes like ringing up groceries at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, what's your name? Oh, hey, is this your favorite of mine? Yeah, okay. Well, how do I spell that name? Thanks so much. It's been so great to meet you. And they never are going to think about you again in your life. But when I presented Sean Cunningham with an original Together poster, and he was flabbergasted and actually held his head at one point because he just couldn't believe what he was saying. Or when I approached Kim Coates and gave him, presented him the poster from the club, and he was like, when I made this, I made this only because they wanted to let me set myself on fire for a scene, and that's what I wanted to do. And you get more time with them, and you get the stories. Whereas, you unfortunately, if I would have walked up to Sean Cunningham and handed him a Friday the 13th poster, it's just ringing up an avocado. That's all it is.
Yeah. Would you go to him with a Together poster to sign?
I did.
That's right. You told that story.
Yeah, it's right. I can't see it because it's behind my camera. I actually have Cunningham signed on my Together poster and my Friday poster behind me. I didn't get him. I didn't have that Jason X poster at the time. I haven't yet begun the Jason X poster, but at some point. But you see, that's the thing. Like, I'm also a guy who doesn't want to really meet people 7 times. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. Okay.
So,
but then of course there's other people that, like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to say to them. Like, okay, Carmen Electra was there, and you know what I did? I just, I'd already met everybody I wanted to meet. Nobody was around her, and I just went up to her and said, "Look, I think you're a superlatively beautiful woman." I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know what else to say, but she appreciated that. So, okay. Well, the lead singer of Kiss was there. And do I want to wait in line to meet the lead singer of Kiss? I don't know. I just don't know. How do I know if it will be a good encounter or a bad encounter? Because I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I'm okay with Kiss, but what am I supposed to say?
Yeah, well, and then there's just the cost involved. Just like when Alice Cooper did year and a half when he was doing the conventions. Love Alice Cooper, I really do. But if you decide to do that, you're dropping a bill, first off, just on a signature. And then the other issue is you're going to spend half your day waiting on that line. So you have to make your decision if that's worth it. To me, it wasn't, even though I love Alice Cooper. So
yeah.
I don't think necessarily quote unquote meeting people is my biggest thing. I like seeing what I feel like when I walk onto a convention floor, I see what's really going on with fandom, and I think that's the most interesting thing for me, because I get very excited, especially when I see what I consider positive trends. You'll always see your Freddys and you'll always see your Jasons and the Michaels. You'll always see them, but in the last few years, I started seeing the killer from Happy Death Day. I'm seeing a lot more Terrifier stuff. I have seen one guy walking around as the killer from Hellfest. That makes me a lot more excited to see the next generation kind of taking this somewhere. Because I get worried that how long can these icons, these from the 70s and 80s, really be the center of the culture? Again, it's kind of like what we talked about before. Unfortunately, they need to leave the stage at a certain time when it's still healthy to do so that someone else gets to turn. I haven't seen Terrifier. I feel like it's probably something I should do, but I'm kind of taking kind of a sabbatical from a lot of slashers, simply because I'm just I don't feel the same way as I used to about new slashers.
Yes,
I used to be very excited about them, and now I find myself less excited. That said, my favorite 2 films of the last 2 years were both slashers, but I don't find myself like getting pumped up for them. I'd rather see kind of the weird experimental horror films coming out that kind of completely original ideas. That gets me up. So,
yeah.
And this kind of plays into it. Obviously, we live in a completely digital world.
Yes.
And like John McClane says in that not very good Die Hard sequel, we're kind of analog guys in a digital world. And it's not even that we're old, really, by any real imagination. We're not old guys. We're just not the young guys anymore.
Right, exactly.
Do you find yourself feeling like most new cinema just feels artificial?
Sometimes, yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just, I love the grain, the natural film grain that's present with those original classic movies that before the digital revolution. I think digital movies look too clean for some reason. They look too clean and polished to me. I mean, it's hard to explain. I'm not an expert, and I try not. I mean, technically speaking, I've always struggled. I mean, I should know how to manipulate Bluray players by now, but I don't. I mean, okay, just real quick. I hate to go off topic a second, but do you know how to switch a Bluray player from region 1 to all region?
Depends on the player. What make?
Life's Good, just as an example.
So, I'm not sure about LG. I do own an LG Bluray player.
Yes.
But I don't remember. There definitely is a code for it. I will tell you, the best world is Sony. On their remotes, there are 4 buttons that run from left to right that are color-coded. Each of those colors is a region with the tray open. You just push a button, and it'll play that region. And they don't advertise it, but it's pretty much true across the board with Sony players.
Maybe I should transfer to Sony when I'm done with my LG players.
LG probably can do it too. Not everything can, because it depends on how they build. Basically, every player that's made can play anything in the world, but when they set it at the factory, sometimes they make models that can be firmware updated, have to be fully flashed, erased, and firmware updated. And other ones, they have all the firmware accessible for anywhere in the country. And it all depends whether they intend to ship those units to everywhere or to one market. It's just a different thought in how to produce. Sony makes it that all their players can play anywhere in the world because they sell everywhere in the world. Panasonic, as an example, when they're making it for themselves, not for other brands, because they do make for other brands, they make it specific for every region. So, although some people have workarounds, it's tougher.
Yeah, I was actually writing reviews online for a defunct website called DVDverdict.com. And this was back when HD DVDs still existed, and there was the whole war that was going on with that. And so I would get movies in the mail to review on HD DVD and Blu-ray, and I just was so confused. It looks like the same thing.
The difference is the laser themselves. The Blu-ray laser was at that time a much more expensive thing to put in a player. So that's why a lot of Hollywood wanted to stick with the red lasers that were in regular DVD players. It was about the capacity. They were assuming the capacity on the disc was going to be a lot bigger of an issue than it was. The the Blu-rays themselves, the blue lasers, don't do a particularly better job, but they do a more consistent job with tracking. So hypothetically, they're a more stable image. But I can tell you that I've seen both, and I think they are identical. I don't think either format was a losing format. It's just they couldn't exist side by side.
Is really 4K that much of an upgrade from Blu-ray? Because I still haven't gone down that road yet.
Depends. So let me put it this way to you.
Okay.
When you grew up, describe the television you watched movies on.
It was big, heavy, and ugly.
Cool. Was it a cabinet unit? Was there wood on either side of the screen?
Oh yes, we had those kind of TVs.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah, I remember them very well.
And then there was a small black and white unit upstairs that I saw a lot more movies on. But if you hooked a 4K UHD player to that unit that you grew up with, you'd still get movies looking exactly like you saw them growing up. And what that means is if you have the hardware, if you have the television to support 4K properly, yes, it makes a difference.
Right. Yes.
Do not buy more player than you can use. It's just pointless. And people say, well, you're future proofing. The problem is physical media is not going to survive long enough for you to future proof. It just isn't. So my thing is buy what's appropriate for your television. If you're running a 1080 screen,
yes,
regular Blu-ray is what you should be buying. If you
oh yeah,
what do you got?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say this is my copy of 1776 on Blu-ray. We talked about this earlier, and it says on it, this was remastered in 4K, as you can see right there. But it says on the back, expanded color requires XVYCC-enabled TV and Blu-ray player. So I have to get a special TV.
To fully utilize that disc, yes.
Yes, yeah, I do. I had that feeling. But
why would you for one disc?
Right.
And that's kind of my issue with UHD. I have a love-hate relationship with it. There's certain discs that I sit there and say, wow, I don't think I could ever go back. Alien. Hellfest. 2001. These are films that you need to own on the best format because the movies hold up on those formats. But then there's other films that honestly don't need, for my enjoyment, I don't need in that quality. And you could say, well, Lauren, you have the player, you have the television to do it, you have your system optimized, and I do. But the question is, how much do you really want to start paying for movies? I really get freaked out by paying more than $20 for anything.
Right.
I find it very hard to justify.
But there's a lot of movies that are out of print, and they're going to continue being out of print so long as physical media keeps disappearing. I mean, I've spent several $100s on some movies knowing that they probably never be re-released, like Dogma, of all movies.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm trying to decide now what I need while I can still get most of what I need at a good price.
And now's the time. Now's the time.
But my catch-22 is this. Like, I went on this absolute crusade to try and own every genre film from the 1930s. Regardless of format, by the way. I didn't care if it was DVD or Blu-ray. There is no UHD for those titles, but I didn't care. I just wanted to make sure I had everything so that because when my feelings are, when streaming is the only option in a couple years, and I think that's what we're looking at is a couple years, these movies are not getting reissued any special editions.
Nope.
They're just going to fall through the cracks. So, when a company releases, the Vampire Bat remastered from the Film Detectives, I need to buy it now.
1930.
Yeah. I need to buy it now. No choice.
Yeah.
But it puts me in a weird position because, like, there's stuff from the 80s and 90s and people are getting very excited about the special editions that look great coming out. I think that stuff will still have a home on streaming. That's where I'm placing my bets. That if I want to find it, I'll still be able to get that stuff. So I'm not really willing to buy that stuff now.
Exactly. I'm just not willing to do it either. I can't. I mean, I'm perfectly happy with Blu-ray. I'm just perfectly happy with it. And I'm just wondering if even Blu-ray players will even be available to buy in a couple of years.
Well, looking at the problems Samsung had this week with their firmware crapping out, and about a third of the players in the whole world just deciding to endlessly reboot and never be able to play a disc. They're working on it, guys. They're working on it. But how long will they work on it? That's a big question.
That's the question mark.
Because they're no longer making Samsung are no longer making hardware. So how long will they support a product that they have no new sales coming on? A couple of years, maybe. That's where things get scary. And people go, well, it's one company, or Samsung sucks or whatever. Well, how long do you think before LG give up the game? How long before Sony? It might not be. The discs might still be being manufactured without any hardware coming into them. That may be our future. And at that point, it becomes a different game for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So. So. If you had to find one character in all of cinema that you most identify with, who would it be?
Most identify with? Give me a moment. Give me a moment. You know what? Even though I have barely his, maybe less than a fraction of his physicality. I mean, honestly, John Rambo in First Blood.
I can see that. Even more the Morel novel that it's based on, but I can see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, that might be. I mean, I like John Rambo. I was on the road for a while. Just not that I got accosted by cops or anything, but man, I did identify with him so much because that movie just captured that post-Vietnam period all too well. All too well. I mean, it was, yeah. One of my favorite movies, and I think it's the greatest action movie of the '80s. Believe it or not. I mean, everybody would go with Die Hard or Lethal Weapon or whatnot, but to me, it's First Blood, and it's weird why it's barely ever mentioned as an action film. Is that just me, or
because it's not? Because what we call post, and I screwed up that sentence. Post Die Hard, we think of action films as a series of set pieces.
Yes, like Speed. Exactly.
The Speed is like the kind of drilled down punk rock version, whereas you're just worried about the bass line. But before that, you were able to have action films that didn't necessarily have all that much action in it if you actually look at the movie. Something like Friedkin's The Sorcerer, right? How much action is in it? Or even Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
I mean, people say comedy, but there's more car chases in it, even though it's lighthearted than anything else.
Yeah.
But Die Hard changed things about people needed like constant flashy lights and action, constant stakes. And I think that is probably why I think action films have pretty much vanished, by the way, replaced by the superhero thing. Because the superhero thing does that exact template naturally, whereas the action film really doesn't. It was really forced to have to do that. So the character I connect most with is always going to be well, this is going to sound fucked up. So it's Dr. Frankenstein from the original Frankenstein, even though I prefer the sequel. And Clive Colin's the
1931 film.
Clive Colin's performance gets overlooked because, I mean, everyone knows he had substance abuse problems, and actually I think that helps the movies. I feel like, if I'm being self-indulgent for a second, and I'm usually self-indulgent, so that's no surprise.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you think of yourself as a creative person, it becomes kind of a cancer, because you kind of lose touch with other people, and you start to sacrifice what other people that you care about legitimately, how your creative world is negatively affecting them. And I think that that performance is really, really profound. It's the best thing about that movie. In fact, I'd say it's the only thing superior to the sequel. The sequel beats it on every count except for his performance, which they just didn't give him much to do in the second film besides pantomime his earlier performance. and try and redeem him, which I think is a mistake. Even though I love every frame of that movie, I think he should have unfortunately perished in the mill. I think it makes more sense to the story.
And I assume you've read Mary Shelley's novel, right?
Of course.
Of course. What do you think is the most faithful adaptation of the book?
I don't think there's been one. That's what I mean. If you make me pick, people will always say it's either the Brana film, which I disagree with. I think tonally it's completely wrong. It might get some set pieces right, but it's just tonally it misses the whole point and tries to turn it into a Shakespearean tragedy, which it's not. I'd say Frankenstein Unbound actually gets the themes right, but obviously
the Roger Corman movie.
Yeah, but obviously they changed the entire story. So I don't think there's any adaptation. Now, Bride of Frankenstein gets the last 7 chapters of the novel really right. But again, they changed basically everything, but it feels right. But again, that's just taking a chunk of the novel. It's not taking the whole novel.
Right.
It's an epistolary novel, which makes it hard to translate anyway, because you talk about letters and news stories and a bunch of, we'd call it found footage today in film language. And so it doesn't translate particularly well because you can't do all the different shifting viewpoints the same way you can in a novel that's told in that way. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it might be one of those rare cases where I sit there and say, I think that I'll take Bride of Frankenstein as my preferred version, even over the novel.
Well, the one I've read, I've never seen the movie, but from what I understand, there's a adaptation from 1974 called The Terror of Frankenstein, which, from what I read, gets the novel better than most other adaptations. Am I wrong on that, or
the Hammer film?
That's a Hammer film.
Yeah. Sort of, except they screw up the character. So Dr. Frankenstein should not be the villain.
Right, I agree with that.
The subtitle of the novel is The Modern Prometheus, and that's kind of what it is. Is it's a guy who tempts heaven, tries to do more than he can, and he's punished on a very personal level for it. And instead, Hammer decided to make him an outright villain. And it works for the films, but to me, again, if you're not going to follow the story beat for beat, which it doesn't either, then you want to at least get like the characters right. But I do like that entire series. Even the later ones that get pretty painful, Frankenstein versus the Monster from Green Hell, all that shit. But I love it all, but for different reasons.
Well, look, with all due love and respect to the original Universal monsters, because, I mean, they're all classics in their own right. I've seen all the Invisible Mans. I've seen all the Mummies. I've seen all the Creature from the Black Lagoons. They're all awesome. My favorite Frankenstein movie will always be Young Frankenstein with Gene Wilder. I can't help it. I mean, I think even Mary Shelley would find it funny.
I don't know if she'd recognize it, because it's basically like a musical parody of Bride of Frankenstein.
Did it make you laugh?
I don't laugh at movies. I just don't. I mean, not that type of humor. When a film tries to make me laugh, and that's their goal, it usually doesn't work, unless it's really dark humor. Like Ready or Not gets me. That movie's humor gets me. When every time they kill a maid, I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard because it's funny. That kind of dark absurdity. And I'm
ashamed because I still need to see it.
Then I won't say anymore. But well, it's not a big surprise. The maids don't do well. It's a really dark, funny movie. That it was my second favorite film of last year, and I wish people would talk about it more because it seems already people are getting amnesia about it.
Yeah.
So I wish that would change. But the funny thing is, in all film now, we're going through this transition right now, whereas films that even we talked about as very important even 20 or 15 years ago are starting to get forgotten already. We don't talk about them nearly as often.
Yep.
And I mentioned the Cape Fear remake earlier. No one ever talks about it. When that thing came out, you thought that was going to be a film that stuck with people's consciousness. I mean, it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was showing what could be done with a remake, right? For my money,
I got to rewatch both Cape Fears, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they both have problems, but they're different problems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering, like, do you think that we're going to get to a point where cinema regains its feet as the center of the entertainment universe? Will there be another class of students of cinema like we are, or
I'm not so sure.
Is that just gone?
I'm not so sure. I can't say it's gone. I'm just saying it's. I think that with YouTube and I think people can make their own movies now. I mean, they can. I mean, hopefully they can find some kind of brand or some kind of outfit to, put their work out there on. But I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have, like the 20th century in terms of how cinema was treated, as almost this out of world experience. Because the ultimate reason why I love movies, and years later when I kind of realized thinking about Dances with Wolves, it's the only way that we can really time travel. If you really think about it, it's really the only way we can time travel. And that's why I'm particularly drawn to period pieces. The Witch. Every second of that movie, I felt like I was in 1631 Massachusetts, in the middle of the woods. And it was great visiting that environment for an hour and a half. Same thing with The Lighthouse. Same thing with The Nightingale. So many other movies, both horror and non-horror. Period pieces are my absolute favorite. I mean, in terms of, maybe that's not a primary genre, but it's definitely a genre. And, I'll go see any movie that's set in another time, in another era. Those are the ones that I like to definitely escape the most in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but I think it's both time period and it's just situations. Like, we all want to be in exciting situations that we'll never actually get to be in our lives, but we want to do it safely. There's a reason we get on the roller coasters.
Yep.
You get on the roller coasters because you're aware that you're going to step off the roller coasters. But if you just try to take that same plunge off a building rather than that first plunge down a roller coaster, you're not going to do as well.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I think that is a big part of cinema. Now, my question to you there would be: are video games the new cinema then? Because is that how people are vicariously living?
The funny thing is that I'm not a big gamer, but I still want to play the Friday the 13th game. I still want to play it despite all the problems I've heard and everything I've seen and everything. I still want to play it. I was the worst video gamer in the world. I mean, the only games I've ever beaten are Doom 2 and Lemmings. That's I did beat Wolfenstein 3D also. But, I'm the type of, I like playing chess. I like playing, cards, Texas Hold'em kind of thing. Video games have exploded so much in popularity. It's its own thing. And I let the experts, talk about video games. Although it's interesting because I actually reached out to Gibbs recently because I wanted to ask him, hey, is Cloak and Dagger really the first video game adaptation? Because I think it is. I think it is legitimately the very first movie based on a real video game, when everybody seems to go towards Super Mario Brothers, which was 9 years later. And I wanted to reach out to him for confirmation. Even he was torn on it.
Can I tell you a little secret?
Go ahead.
My favorite film of last year, Game Over.
Yes.
Is unofficially a video game adaptation. And I can't explain why.
Unofficially?
They didn't really have the rights to make it official, but it is.
No, but I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. They kind of snuck through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you what could be possible with someone with the rights, what they could do.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That being said, are they still making the Candyland movie? Are they?
Oh, who knows? Who thinks that's a good idea?
You know what? I gotta. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I sometimes lose track of like what Hollywood is even thinking. It's like, oh, there's a property people will recognize. Is that really all they're thinking? Is that really it?
Yep. And honestly, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a great video game adaptation, Cloak and Dagger aside, because I've never seen a great video game adaptation. The only one I've seen in theaters, and I didn't hate it, but I was like, okay, whatever. It was Hitman. Ironically enough, I chose that over a Robert Zemeckis Beowulf animated movie. But yeah, there you go.
I know I've seen the Tomb Raider films, but I can't tell you a thing about them.
Yeah, some people like the Mortal Kombat movies. You know what? I couldn't get through one round of Mortal Kombat in the arcade. I mean, believe me, I was the worst video gamer. I was the worst gamer.
Big Crack Rock says that he still has to see Rampage. I did see Rampage, and I heard
Rampage was fun.
It's bad in good ways. So, yeah. Just like the video game is bad in good ways. Wow. So, I'm just wondering, as we go to the future, what are you looking for? I mean, obviously we can't relive the past, but what are you looking for in film from here on out?
What am I looking for in film from here on out? I mean, that's a really good question because, I mean, I don't think that we are facing the death of cinema. I mean, I think that it's going to have a lot of issues moving forward. Why do I have a bad feeling that Disney is going to try to absorb every other studio out there, and every movie is going to be released on one big top? I can't help but imagine, that kind of thing. I mean, I guess I just want independent artists, independent filmmakers to at least have some kind of platform, some kind of method, some kind, just to get their work out there. That would be all I would ask for. And look, I still want the option to go to movie theaters, whether it's in a drive-in or Alamo Draft House, whatever. Hey, I would be perfectly happy if all the theaters shut down except Alamo. I mean, I don't respect a lot of the other big chains anymore, and I haven't for years. I mean, they don't like. I mean, I've worked in my fair share. I worked at a Regal at one point, and it just, I don't know. Everybody is so unpredictable, and they're so rude, and they don't seem to understand that it's not their living room. They just can't seem to get it in their thick skull. I mean, the worst I've heard is that, can you imagine somebody in a movie theater changing a baby?
Oh, I can imagine it. I will tell you. So, I've gone to see way too many movies in my life, and this tells you that.
Yeah.
And there was a point where as I was working later shifts, and so I was going to a lot of movies in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you discover some really weird things happen in the middle of the day in movie theaters. In theaters that maybe you came in, you're just by yourself, and you sit kind of towards the back. There's only one other couple in the place, and they're way up front. So you're like, I have seen carnal acts performed in movie theaters. In silhouette, however, still very obvious. And I just don't know. I guess it's cheaper than a hotel, I guess. Mm-hmm. I've also seen homeless people just figure out they could sneak in and just take up a row, sleeping long-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my love of theaters comes back to like the fact that I think there's something about taking yourself out of your home to go experience something, getting rid of all your comforts, which is what everyone else tells me they love. But I think it's almost a negative because you don't truly focus on the film until you're kind of out of your comfort a little bit. That said, the downside of it is, yes, it's the cell phones. You know, a couple decades ago was the laser pointers. There's always going to be problems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will say that there are definitely movies that benefit from a theatrical experience because
10 times, yes.
Yeah, that especially if it's the kind of film that like audience reaction actually makes the film better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I find that's not true when everyone knows the movie. When everyone knows the movie and everyone tries to turn everything into Rocky Horror, that doesn't work for me. That's just annoying. Rocky Horror is its own thing, but you know, if you go to see a reportory viewing of Die Hard, you don't want that. It's just obnoxious. It's not good.
Yeah.
But when you go see something, I saw it last fall when I went to see Countdown, which is a perfectly okay horror movie. It's not great. It may barely make it over the mark into good, but I liked it. It was likable. But the audience did not know that movie, but they were chiming along with it, and it actually bolstered the experience. It was good. It was good to have that interference for that type of movie. So it still exists, but I think it's in my perfect world, it would be an all of the above. We still have our sit-down theaters. We have our dine-in theaters. We have our drive-ins. We have direct-to-video. We have some form of physical media still out there so the collectors can be happy. We have streaming because, you know, streaming is the new video store. I don't want to buy everything just to see it the first time. Unfortunately, I can want that as much as, you know, as much as there are hours in the day. I'm not going to win this battle. So I'm trying to resign myself as a film fan to what do I do to be able to enjoy movies going forward. And that means collecting old movies that I don't think I'll have a home. And that means embracing streaming. It means all of it.
I already have a plan myself. I mean, I'm going to be, well, let me just say also, just real quick, that I've been fighting the VA for 14 years and finally, officially, just last month got 70% disability rating. So I plan on moving house here pretty soon. And what I want to do is just have a whole room basically be a theater. You know, I want to put actual 6 theater seats in it. One wall is the whole screen, and just just make exactly the whole works. Maybe have a popcorn machine, maybe not. I don't know, but yeah, one room just be a theater, a literal theater.
Stone, Piz just offered to help you move. He says he's even going to spring for the truck rental and the boxes.
Piz, you're the man, dude. I appreciate it.
He's picking you up this weekend to come out to see Raiders, and he's going to help you move. Man, I could never be as good a friend as Piz is. I mean, that's so amazing. So we got to talk about the elephant in the room that gets mentioned every stream, because if I don't, someone will yell at me later.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room is that, so how do you feel about long-running franchises? Do you think they need to go away and we need new blood, or do you think there's still something to wrench from a new Raiders of the Lost Ark, a new Indiana Jones, a new Star Wars, a new Friday the 13th? Are you just tired like I am?
I'm tired. I'm burned out. I'm very, very burned out. I you know, I'm very much desperate for new blood. I really am. I mean, I mean, I think that we need to, you know, just stray a little bit from recognizable names and actually put some, you know, real groundbreaking stuff out there that is completely original, because that's what I dig the most. I mean, The Lodge, even though, I mean, it had elements from other films, like with the isolations and everything, man, that was an original, if I'm not wrong. I mean, I didn't really, I mean, I'm sure you could probably name better inspirations for that movie than I can, but,
mostly
you know, that was that was the last movie I saw in the theater, was The Lodge. And, you know, and especially that was during that period where I wanted to go see more horror movies in the actual theaters. And man, The Lodge was so good, and I mean, if hopefully that might win some awards later in the year, but it's still it feels like it was barely watched. The Universal film that everybody saw this movie, the horror movie, was The Invisible Man, which I still haven't seen the update of Invisible Man yet. I mean, but and I still part of me still wants to see A Quiet Place Part 2. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, Invisible Man, I've said it a million times, is a perfectly good brain dead film. If you just want to shut off your mind, you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the plot is a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Listen, I love a lot of films like that. So if people love that movie more than I do, that's cool. I'm never going to criticize someone for liking it more than I do. It's just, I think we have to acknowledge that it's not quite as brilliant as some people are trying to portray it as, which is...
You know what? I think I'd rather watch Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon again.
So Hollow Man is really a weird one for me because, like, everyone remembers the wonderfully sleazy set pieces from that film.
The rape, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, and people say, "Oh well, I wish that wasn't in the movie," but it's all they talk about.
Kevin Bacon, all he does is sexually harass people.
That's it.
Pretty much.
That's it.
This is Paul Verhoeven we're talking about, the director of Showgirls.
Do you get the feeling that maybe Harvey Weinstein watched that movie like on repeat, like every waking moment, that he wasn't molesting someone?
You know what? Okay, we got to talk about Harvey for a second because, look, I just saw for the very first time, and I did tweet it out. For the very first time, I'm sure the audience is going to be shocked. I saw The Burning for the very, very, very first time.
Watch yourself. Piz may decide not to pick you up this weekend or help you move.
Look, no. Look, I did not hate The Burning. I mean, there were things I thought were awesome about it. The best thing I liked about it was the attack on the river. Very well shot, very well done. And I thought the third act was actually pretty damn good too. But there were moments where I can't help but to say, look, there were moments that made me think of Harvey Weinstein. And look, he created it. He produced it. He was responsible for the fucking story. Okay? I have no reason ever in the world to see The Burning ever again. I am glad I finally saw it. And I'm glad that, that there were things about it that I appreciated, even though I just can't. I can't watch it again. I mean, it didn't. There wasn't enough in there for me to go back to on a regular basis or for future viewings. And another reason was, of course, and I think I mentioned this in our chat a while back. But look, I hated summer camps. I mean, Friday the 13th is like the rarest of exceptions when it comes to summer camp movies. But I mean, I don't like movies that remind me of being at summer camp because some of my most miserable times growing up were at those places, and I just would prefer to block them all out. But I mean, look. The Burning, it is what it is. I respect it on a certain level because I know that slasher film fans hold it in very high regard. I do. I had to see it for myself, and I'm glad I finally did, but I just can't do it for that one reason. I can't. Look, I mean, Weinstein deserves to be in prison for the rest of his fucking life. And, I know that there were other people that worked on The Burning. I know that, here again, collaboration and everything. And that's what I'm saying is that there were definitely good things about it. I mean, I can see why slasher fans love it, but I can't return to it.
I've always liked the movie, but I've never loved it. And I am in the minority in the slasher community as well, in that a lot of people will say that it's like one of their top 5 slashers. And it does. It's just nowhere near that for me. And I don't know what it is, except maybe that I can't remember any characters with any clarity. And I'm big on that. You just watched this, you might be able to do that, but to me, I can't just instantly recall my favorite character of all the victims. I just can't do it.
I remember Jason Alexander only because he was there.
And because he's Jason Alexander, right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I think but I'm probably very keyed into that, whereas other people will be like, "That's not why I watch a slasher film," and that's legit.
Mhm.
That's cool. Whereas if you talk about like the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, like
Yeah. Mhm.
there's characters like the shop owner of the toy store. And
Yes.
that's a character that sticks with you. So that immediately makes Silent Night, Deadly Night higher on my list. Just because I like the idea of being able to have these memorable but grounded characters. I don't like sitcom fodder characters in slasher films.
Yeah.
Those
are the worst.
That's a big pet
Those
peeve
are just.
for me. People always ask me about the third Friday Part 3. And that's the thing that holds that movie back for me, is that I don't buy any of those characters as real people.
Yeah.
And I wish that weren't the case, but of the first 4, it'll always be my least favorite of the first 4. It's still pretty high still in the overall ranking, but so I key into characters, and I just don't think Burning has quite as strong characters. If you're going to make an apples to apples comparison, the characters from Sleepaway Camp, the first film, are stronger to me. So
yes. Yeah,
but again,
absolutely.
I can understand why people would love it, and I love the fact that it's a document of a time period where before the MPAA was shredding slasher films. So I do like. I do like it. I just don't love it.
And I can safely say for the audience, look, this is my favorite slasher movie of 1981. I can't. I've watched this movie many, many times since buying this DVD. I can't get enough of it. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's that good. I think it's very underseen, and I'm just so happy that I've met many other people in the community that embrace it just as well, even though barely anybody outside of the community has ever heard of it. Period.
It did get a lot of television airings though in the late '80s.
It did.
I remember the thing being on. I don't think I ever rented it. I think I've only ever seen it on television.
Yes.
But so let's talk about the the online community. You actually have a very active Twitter presence in the film community.
Yeah, I do.
You like to start off the day with remembrances of very specific films, or trivia questions, or images from films, and you tend to get a decent amount of responses every day.
Yeah, and I can't explain that. I mean, see, I'm one of those guys that even though I consider myself a writer, I consider myself my own worst critic. And, I mean, look, I've written for newspapers. I've written for websites. I've never thought that my opinion ever really mattered or was relevant or nobody cares. I mean, look, I'm just passionate about film. I mean, when I discovered film when I was a very young age, 5, 6 years old, I just didn't stop. And mainly because I found real life so sucky. I found I hated real life so much. I just escaped into movies. I didn't care. That was my... that's where I went, as much as I want. I mean, and believe me, by 10 years old, I was watching Chaplin and Keaton, some of the silent greats. I'd already watched all of Hitchcock's movies by that time. In fact, okay, I got a story for you here, Lauren. The last Hitchcock movie I saw was the one movie that my father refused to ever see again, which was Psycho. He saw it once. He was so scared by it. What? He was so scared. He was so scared by it, he refused to ever watch again. And he was hardcore Hitchcock. 39 Steps, a Rope. A lot of the early.
The big question is, was he a family plot apologist?
I don't think he cared about family plot that much. I don't think he liked Frenzy either. I like Frenzy.
Oh, I love
think
Frenzy.
That's one of. Yeah, Frenzy. Awesome, but I mean, Psycho. When
Stone, you've hit the wall. I think. In the chat, just let me know if you're getting the techno remix of Stone that I am.
I mean, if it's 30, do you want to do like a 5-minute intermission?
Well, why don't we why don't you ask me what's coming up on the show on next Monday, and that'll give us a few seconds to reset the clock. So go ahead and ask.
Good idea. So, Lauren, what is going on Sunday?
Thank you for asking, sir.
Hey, what's this movie about?
It's supposed to be some kind of horror movie.
So I'll be joined on Monday the 6th by Aaron B. Kuntz, the creator, producer, and co-director of Scare Package, a film you may have recently seen on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In. It is also available on Shudder. It is an anthology of very kind of punk rock horror vignettes, kind of like if the Sex Pistols had directed a episode of Creepshow. I think it's really worth your time. It's a lot of fun. It speaks directly to the audience that is really fond of video stores and the rental era, and it's a wild time. So he'll be on. He'll be talking about that. He'll also be talking about his upcoming horror western that's coming out in August, and a little bit about all the films he's worked on before getting his own ventures off the ground. So I'm very thankful that he's coming on, because I think he's one of those guys that is has given us one of the bright spots for this year's releases. So we'll be going live at 8 o'clock Eastern time, and it's definitely going to be a fun conversation. So make sure to join us. Stone, your picture seems to be back and normal?
Yes.
Ooh. Christian's trying to bait us here. He says Scare Package is better than Halloween 78. I can't quite agree with that, and I'm not sure Aaron would either. But Jamie will counteract him by saying, "I watched it last night and I loved it. Very colorful and funny." And I just got dyslexic on her comment, but the point got across. Yeah, so I mean that's gonna be fun. Now, this weekend I may do a solo show, guys. I'm still working it out. Obviously, if I'm gonna do it on the 4th, it's gonna be very late on the 4th. If not, I might do a Sunday during the day. I don't know though exactly what's up with this weekend. I just have a lot going on. We will be back on Monday with Aaron, and then on Thursday with the 9th, we will be back. I'll announce that guest on Monday, but that's another exciting one that I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun with. So Stone, where can people go to keep up with you and what you got going on?
I do have a website, stonegasman.com. I haven't written anything on it for a while because I've been just too busy working, and I'm preparing some projects later in the month for that. So there will be stuff coming later in the month. But other than that, my Twitter is my primary. If you want to reach out to me, stonegasman @stonegasman, and yeah, that's about it.
And both those links are already in the description under this video right now. So you can just cut and paste it at your leisure. So before we go, just wanted to kind of thank you for coming on. But more than that, I wanted to thank you for something that I think gets overlooked too often. We've been on panel shows before, the Sausage Factory, of course. And I think that sometimes in the heat of just the passion of talking about horror movies and things from 20 years ago and nostalgia in the 80s, sometimes it's hard to see the people on the panel. And I want to thank you for always putting yourself out there. You're a person that has had a very specific set of life experiences, and you've always been willing to share, and you've always been positive and kind to people. You've always wanted to hear their opinions, not just have them listen to yours. Increasingly in our society, that's a rarity. So I want to thank you for your service in our military. I want to thank you more than that, though, for being yourself and being fearlessly yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Lost Cunningham says, "Thank you for your service, sir," and he's having a drink for you. I don't drink, but well, I have, I think, a sip left of this.
Yep. Again, I'm not sponsored by Vape here, but the Prima vaporizer is like one of the most awesome things on the market right now. Just to let you guys know.
So if Prima want to send me a check for platforming you, I'm not saying I'm on the table, but I'm saying I'll accept the money.
Well, yeah, you'll play their ads in between the shows too, right?
I don't think I'll ever do that. You know, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. The channel is growing, but it's growing at a very moderate pace, and my goal is not to get monetized. My goal is to get to the point where as the announcements of the shows are going out to a wider audience, so that more people can find it, so that we can build a community here that grows like a spider web. And again, I please everyone out in the chat, if you write a blog, write the hell out of that blog. If you make movies, make that movie. If you don't do anything creative, but you have a few extra bucks that you can throw into a Patreon account of a guy who does write or make movies or whatever, that's what this is about. This is about making what we love accessible, but making more of it. That's my goal. So if you guys are wondering, there'll never be a Patreon account for me. I don't think you'll ever see an actual ad that benefits me on this channel. And I'm not criticizing anyone who does any of that, because I understand the importance and everyone has different life situations. But for me, this is really just about trying to build something whereas I can have a home too. Because I don't know about you, but I wasn't the popular kid in school. I was very far from the first one picked. And the truth is, if we can build a place whereas our viewpoints matter and we don't have to play the political games that everyone else plays in the fan sphere, that would be just amazing. And someone like Stone or I, we might not be what you'd expect on your average television screen at 9:42 at night, but we should be in a way, and so should all of you. So Al from Russia-Delphia, we need more of you. Jess Graham, we need more of you. Lost Cunningham, we need more of you. Jamie, we need more of you. Nicodemus Santiago, we need more of you. Because the community is what matter. And if you look at the films we all love now, they were all us once. They were all just people who love this shit. So, any final words to these ensembled masses, or at least the 35 that are watching?
Well, okay. I've been thinking about it. I'd like to leave on this tidbit, because last weekend I saw a horror film. I haven't seen it in a while, but I would like to recommend everybody out there to my horror peeps and everything. This is a movie you definitely need to catch up on and watch again, because Kingdom of the Spiders, starring William Shatner, is one of the coolest, most awesome creature features I have ever seen. It's even better than Arachnophobia in my book. I did a live tweet on it the other day, and just, man, does it hold up so good. You've got to respect William Shatner. I don't care how anybody feels about Star Trek. He allowed over 30 tarantulas to be put on his body. No other actor, aside from Alfred Molina in Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's no other actor I can think of that would be willing to put that many tarantulas on. I mean, one of the coolest, most underrated horror films of the 70s. Go check it out if you haven't, or revisit it, because that movie's awesome.
And there's your recommendation for a great drive-in flick. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon. If I don't see you this weekend, I hope to see you Monday, but I'm going to try and get on at some point. So watch your notifications. If you haven't hit that little bell button so you get my notifications, please do that. And please spread the word. Thank you much. Have a great weekend.